Coming up today, a row is intensifying over opposition lawmakers' endorsement of a motion to recommend the dismissal of President Park's new agriculture minister. Protesting the move, the ruling party is boycotting the annual parliamentary audit. More headaches for Korea's largest automaker. Unionized workers at Hyundai Motor down tools completely after rejecting a wage hike proposal. Plus, in 22 hours from now, the wait will be over. The most highly anticipated U.S. presidential debate in history between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump comes as latest polls show it's neck and neck. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Monday, the 26th of September. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you ever so much for joining us today. I'm Mark Broom. The first parliamentary audit of the 20th National Assembly has opened, but it's mired in bipartisan wrangling already. The biggest sticking point this time is the opposition party's decision to file a motion to dismiss President Park's choice for Agriculture Minister. Our political correspondent, Ji Myung-gil, has the details.
A 20-day audit of government ministries and agencies has begun at the National Assembly, but lawmakers from the ruling Saenuri Party have not showed up for the first day.
The opposition parties and the Assembly Speaker have been politicizing the dismissal motion against the Agriculture Minister so they can extend the probing period of a special investigative committee into the Seoul ferry disaster.
The ruling and opposition parties have been at odds since last Friday, after the opposition parties passed a motion to dismiss Kim Jae-soo, President Park's pick for Agriculture Minister. Kim, who took office earlier this month, has been under fire from opposition lawmakers over allegations of suspicious real estate trading and receiving a loan from a bank at an unusually low rate. Therefore, 12 parliamentary committees made up of only opposition party lawmakers will look into government agencies and state-run corporations on Monday. The main opposition Minju Party of Korea urged the ruling party to participate in the audit sessions.
The ruling party has ridiculed the speaker and boycotted all parliamentary affairs. Abandoning the audit is the same as neglecting our duty to look after the people's livelihoods.
Unless the parties reach some kind of a compromise, the ruling party will continue to boycott the audit. The Saenuri Party has accused the opposition parties of using the agriculture minister issue to block all parliamentary affairs and go against the Park administration in a bid to score cheap political points. During the audit period, the National Assembly is expected to focus on the deployment of the U.S. anti-missile system, THAAD, and countermeasures since the powerful earthquakes that jolted southeastern Korea earlier this month. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Now, staying with domestic politics and over at the top office, President Park's chief of staff gathered all staff members to encourage them to work together toward achieving the administration's policy goals. Lee Won-jung said the presidential staff must collaborate in order to overcome the current crises of North Korea's nuclear threats and the country's economic difficulties. It's Lee's first employee assembly since he took the post back in May. President Park Geun-hye's chief aides also called on officials to remember their mission to work for the nation. His remarks follow a workshop for high-level government officials held over the weekend to assess the administration's achievements and goals for the remaining year and a half. The Supreme Prosecutor's Office has requested an arrest warrant for Lotte Group chairman Shin Dong-bin for embezzlement and breach of trust charges amounting to roughly $154 million. Many had expected prosecutors to continue the investigation into Shin without detaining him, but officials reportedly made the decision based on the gravity of the charges against him and in consideration of possible future probes into other Korean conglomerates. The 61-year-old allegedly presided over questionable mergers and acquisitions, selling the assets at below market prices. He is also accused of amassing over $26 million in slush funds siphoned off the group's construction arm over the past 10 years. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has reportedly sent gifts to North Koreans hit hardest by the recent floods in the country. The North state-run Korean Central Television reported Sunday that Kim provided gifts to people in North Hamgyong province, a region severely affected by the torrential rain last month. He did not visit the area himself, though, and the report did not elaborate on what kind of gifts were actually sent. The North's official media reported earlier this month that Kim had sent anti-flood equipment to the same area. The regime has been mobilizing soldiers and workers to help the 140,000 people affected by the worst flooding the country has seen in decades. Now, onto the global economy. The global growth rate is expected to dip down below 3% this year and into next if recent projections come true. And South Korea is absolutely no exception, with the ongoing corporate restructuring drive taking a serious toll on the economy. Our Kim Jong-soo has more.
Major economic and financial institutions have recently downgraded their latest forecasts to project the global economy will grow in the 2% range this year. The projections also say Korea's growth rate will drop to near 1% for the last quarter of 2016 and the first 2 quarters of 2017. In a report out last week, the OECD said that global growth is expected to slow at a much more rapid rate than anticipated, as the world has entered a low growth trap. It lowered its global growth projection for 2016 to 2.9% last Wednesday, from 3% back in June. This is also 0.2 percentage points lower than the annual growth in 2015, which was at a low after the global financial crisis. At the height of the crisis in 2009, the global growth rate dipped below zero. It jumped up to over 5% in 2010 and then dropped into the 4% range in 2011 and continued to fall through 2015. The OECD also revised its forecast for next year from 3.3% to 3.2%. The International Monetary Fund has also made similar projections, with Managing Director Christine Lagarde saying earlier this month that, quote, forceful policy actions must be devised, or the world could suffer from disappointing growth for a long time. For Korea, major investment banks such as HSBC have projected that the country's growth rate in the fourth quarter of this year will remain unchanged at 1.6% from the same period last year. HSBC predicts the growth rate for the first and second quarters of next year will hover at 1.8%. JP Morgan has cited numerous reasons for its own negative projections for Korea, saying that the government's corporate restructuring drive and tighter regulations on mortgage loans could stifle the country's growth in 2017. Kim Jong-soo, Arirang News.
Now, the union of Korea's largest automaker, Hyundai Motor, has launched a full strike after rejecting an earlier compromise on a wage increase. While the two sides will meet again this week for another round of negotiations, it's expected to cause significant damage to the auto giant, but also its subcontractors. Kim Min-ji with the details.
Unionized workers at Hyundai Motor have walked off the job after rebuffing a compromise on a wage hike. Assembly lines at the automaker's factories in Ulsan, Cheonju, and Asan were all halted early Monday morning. The strike is seen as a move to pressure the company to put forward a new proposal following the latest negotiations last week. The full strike is the first of its kind in 12 years. The union held partial strikes 19 times during the wage negotiations, which Hyundai claims costed roughly $2 billion from the loss in production of over 100,000 cars. The union plans to strike for 6 hours every day this week, with the exception of days when there are negotiations, when they will strike for 4 hours. The two sides reached a tentative agreement last month to raise workers' monthly wages by about $50 and give a bonus of 350% of their monthly pay and a separate cash bonus of roughly $3,000. The management also scrapped a plan to introduce a wage peak system, where wages fall at a certain age in exchange for longer time on the job, which had been one of the most contentious issues. However, the compromise was rejected by unionists, with nearly 80% voting it down. The management says the union has gone back on its word by turning down the earlier deal, saying it will take a toll not only on Hyundai but its subcontractors and the local economy. The union and management will meet again this week in an attempt to reach another tentative deal. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
A farmer who was knocked down by a police water cannon during an anti-government protest last November has died. Becks was in a coma for 317 days until his death Sunday, the day after his 70th birthday. The Seoul Central District Court has denied a request by the prosecution for an autopsy to determine what caused Becks to lose consciousness. The court has yet to issue a reason for the dismissal. Becks' family also opposes the autopsy, saying prosecutors could be trying to alter the cause of death instead of investigating the government's use of water cannons at the rally. An autopsy cannot be conducted without the consent of the family. The prosecution is reviewing whether to make another autopsy request. Seoul in the year 2040 is going to look a lot different than it does now, with a smaller and older population. The average household will also shrink in size, with one person or one couple households accounting for about 60% of the total population. This is all according to a report by the Seoul Institute based on data collected from Statistics Korea and the Seoul government. The Korean capital's population is currently about 10 million. But that figure is expected to shrink to 9 million by 2040. The think tank says the continuing low birth rate trend, coupled with the rise in the number of households leaving the city due to high housing expenses, will push people out of Seoul. The report estimates the average age will stand at 52, a big difference given the average age in 2013 was 39. Now, the wait is almost over. US presidential candidates Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump will hold their first presidential debate in less than 24 hours from now in New York. It's expected to be the most watched presidential debate in history. That could even rival ratings seen during the Super Bowl. Kim Mo-kyun reports.
Aside from their separate meetings with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday, Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton and her Republican rival Donald Trump minimized their schedules ahead of the highly anticipated debate. The historical matchup will take place for 90 minutes from 9 p.m. at New York's Hofstra University. It will be moderated by NBC anchor Lester Holt, and the pre-announced topics are America's direction, achieving prosperity, and securing America. Clinton has 3 decades of experience in politics and a long history of high-profile debates. She stopped campaigning since last Wednesday and has been focusing on preparing for the debate. CBS News reports that her longtime aide Philippe Reines has been acting as Trump, attempting to mimic his unique debate style. On the other side of the podium, Donald Trump has been preparing while out on the campaign trail. He's been looking for Clinton's flaws in past debates with the help of Stephen Bannon, the CEO of the Trump campaign manager Kellyanne Conway, former New York Mayor Rudolph Giuliani, and others on his team. However, it's not known whether he had someone stand in for Clinton. The two candidates are neck and neck ahead of the debate. A poll released on Sunday by ABC News and Washington Post showed voters are split, with 46% for Clinton and 44% for Trump, well within the poll's 4.5 percentage point margin of error. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
A new study has found that America's security commitments abroad are a net economic gain for the US, amounting to hundreds of billions of dollars. In a recent report, the Rand Corporation said the economic benefits of the United States military footprint outweigh the costs by at least 3.5 times. The study concluded that a 50% cut in America's security commitments could reduce the country's bilateral trade, excluding that with Canada and Mexico, by over $570 billion a year, or roughly 18% of the total. While there's a growing debate over whether the U.S. military presence abroad is a win or loss for the country, the study says that policymakers who reduce these commitments would face not only the immediate problems of how and where to make the reductions, but also the future problems of a poorer United States. Arnold Palmer, known by many as one of the greatest golfers of all time, has died. Palmer died Sunday in Pittsburgh after being hospitalized Thursday for cardiovascular issues. He was 87 years old. Palmer began his career as a pro golfer in 1955 and won 7 majors, 4 Masters, 1 US Open and 2 British Opens, establishing himself as a golfing legend. He also won 62 events on the PGA Tour, the 5th most of any golfer. Palmer was inducted into the World Golf Hall of Fame in 1974. Figures both in and outside the golf world have been paying tribute to the legend on social media. Well, that's all we have for now on this Monday lunchtime here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you as always for tuning in. We will be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Our next bulletin is coming up at 3 p.m. Korea time. So until then, goodbye.